We should never go to war. We've got to get it forward from the United Nations. I think it's time to say no to the federal war on drugs. I don't believe that. The borders are not safe, and it isn't immigrants coming in to try to survive that's causing the problem. It's the war on drugs that's causing the problem. It was done in Colombia and various nations of Central America, including Mexico. They suggested the president let's have a discussion about maybe considering changing some of these drug laws. He wouldn't have any part of it. They wanted to talk about having a more open relationship with Cuba. He didn't want to talk about it. But the war on drugs has been very devastating to our civil liberties. It's been very costly. Since the 1970s, it's cost over $3 trillion. Just say it's debt. We have to borrow the money from some foreign countries to fight this. Drugs are more readily available than ever before. And the whole thing is, as bad as some of these illegal drugs are for people, and as serious as that problem is, the real serious problem in this country today with drug addiction are prescription drugs. The drug issue to me, it's a freedom issue. Freedom to make your own choices, even when you make dangerous choices. That we can make a very serious decision about our spiritual life and our hereafter. That's pretty serious, and we don't want the government dictating on that. We don't want the government dictating to us what our intellectual pursuits would be and what books we can read. But we're all of a sudden just accept the notion that even though there can be risk in those religious beliefs and intellectual beliefs, which causes, revolutions and everything, we as people have accepted the notion that the government and some agency, all the way from the federal government, now including the United Nations, down to your local government, telling you how much salt you can put on your food, what you can eat and drink, and prevent you from, alternative health care. That war needs to end. Another reason why the war doesn't end, erroneously, some people with religious beliefs, and I don't fault them for saying, drugs are bad, we'd like to teach our children. But that's up to us. The individual, our children. Progress in this, and I suspect that the laws will come to our senses. Because when you see individuals who were strongly in support of these laws changing their mind, and there are some religious leaders like Pat Robertson out there, maybe these laws aren't working, maybe we ought to reassess them. We are making progress, and Steve Forbes, a good friend of mine in the financial market, the laws aren't working. Prohibition doesn't work. We tried it with alcohol, didn't work, causes criminality. We put people into prison for life for 3 offenses, non-violent, and yet we hear of murderers and rapists getting out after hours. It's a great issue to bring people together, because when you use the term states' rights, sometimes it gets a bad rap. They say, oh, that means you're not a good person, and states' rights is code word for bad things. But the whole thing is the Constitution allows for states to deal with a lot of problems. That's where it's supposed to take care of it. So the left generally will criticize the right for saying states' rights. But here, what about the left tends to be more sympathetic for making personal choices. So if you have a state like California, where it's only legalization of individuals who are sick and in wheelchairs and have multiple sclerosis, they use marijuana that they raise in their backyard, and we're sending the feds in there to overrule the state law. That is where we should say state law should override, and of course it's been disappointment to me and to some others, because our president had given us some hope that he would be more modest in the way these laws are being enforced. But to literally arrest people, and it's been done, who are in wheelchairs and never committed a violent act, we need to just wake up and say, you know, it's time. The drug war has been the excuse for a lot of people's homes to be busted into. And it's not like one or two a month or one or two a week. I mean, I think it's into the hundreds per day when you have these operations, local and federal and FBI, breaking in and say, oh, we heard you know there were drugs in here, and breaking in and killing people that were totally innocent. And breaking up property and doing damage, and then the people don't even have recourse. This is every bit as bad as what the king was doing with the troops that caused our revolution. That's why we need a revolution. Talking about is a nonviolent revolution. Well, along its way, that's where the great progress has been made in the revolution, intellectually. It's been going on for quite a few decades, so the groundwork has been laid. This particular campaign has, you know, touched into and tapped into it, but we didn't invent it. And you have to have an intellectual revolution, which preceded maybe for 100 years before our first revolution, because the founders were well versed in the concept of property rights and personal liberties, and they knew the history. But that groundwork has been laid. But I'll tell you what, in the last couple of years, there's something very special going on. I never dreamed that we would get to the point where the Federal Reserve would become an issue in the presidential campaign. But this is, I think we should be very pleased with that. I think it's really in the early stages, but I don't think it's going to stop. Because what's happened in 2008 and 2009 was the obvious need. You know, the foreign policy failed, the entitlement system failed, the monetary policy failed, the debt is uncontrollable, and especially the young people say, wow, what are we getting into here? And they'll wake up and say, is there a better way? And there is a better way. And I didn't know that. We had that made our country great at one time and the most prosperous. You know, it means the rule of law, protecting individuals equally. It has to do with property rights and so many. All those things have been available and they were developed for many hundred years. These principles have been around, but we're casually throwing them away. And this is what is so disturbing, that by executive orders, the president wrote an executive order just recently, and it was to renew the Defense Production Act. That's a bill, a law that was passed in 1950. It was a terrible law. And it said that in the time of a war or emergency, the president declare a national emergency and take over everything. Everything. Financial, all businesses, whatever he sees. That's on the books. He renewed that by the executive order. He changed it a bit. He did. He said, in times of peace, too. That's when I want to make sure that this revolution is successful and we repeal that law for sure. A couple weeks ago, said that any law enforcement officer has the authority under the Constitution now. It was an error victory fought before. It's a shame that one person can change our Constitution so casually. But it said that anybody who is being investigated or is stopped by a police officer, they can be strip searched. And it was that is horrible. what we're putting up with at the airport. It's horrible. We need to get rid of the TSA. Just the idea, we do need the ideas, we do need reasons, but we also have to have passion. We have to really believe in it, and I think this is what is being generated. There's now a lot of passion. I do not know how the election will come out. Right now, it looks like our success is going to be difficult in terms of getting enough of the delegates. But let me tell you, what's going on now will not be stopped. Time has come, and it's not going backwards, it's going back and picking up the pieces and move on and refine it, make it a better gold standard, have a better definition. We have a lot of shortcomings over the years. We started off with slavery in this country. So there's a lot of things that we can do much better. And one important thing is, I'd like to get people out of this idea that we are important because we belong to a particular group. The group that we belong to is humankind, and that we are So if we do that, we give no special privileges to anybody, but we don't give any punishments to a group because they belong to a group. And this is what is so miraculous about the concept of liberty, and we have not had a good exposure to this for 100 years or so. The founders understood it completely. Jefferson knew it when he talked about right to life, or right to liberty, right to pursue your happiness as an individual. But now that we have advanced through this slavery stage and all this, I think this can be stated so much better. We've got to put this back together again and say liberty is important, liberty brings us together, and that each and every one of us may well use our liberty differently. But that should bring us together now. If you do that and you have free markets and somebody's poorer than the other person, that means you endorse poverty and that sort of thing. Somebody else will say, well, if you have too much liberty, you might abuse that liberty and do some harm to yourself. Governments can't protect you from yourself, no matter what they try. All they can do is take away your liberty. If you have liberty, you don't make an endorsement. I don't endorse the way people, I happen to be a believer, but I believe in freedom of choice. I believe in free will. If somebody makes a different choice, if they make it and they hurt themselves. The big thing is, if you do it, if you want your freedom, and you do make bad choices, you have no right to go to your neighbor and demand that you be taken care of. In a good revolution that's well motivated, you really strive for what seems to be the impossible. And some people would say, yeah, that sounds great, but think of the burden, the debt, all these problems you described. That's too impossible. We can't achieve that. But I think we should always strive. Matter of fact, you won't reach it if you don't strive for it. You don't know exactly. But if you start off in the middle and say, well, we only want a half a package, believe me, you'll get about 10%. So you want to strive for the very best, and then the whole thing is the results will surprise us all. And I am convinced that this is what's going to happen. You can start off. I did not believe, well, no, the first time I ran for Congress, I figured, I had a speech that was pretty similar to this. And I figured, nobody's going to let me. I'm not going to come out and say, this is what we give you, this is what we give you. I want to just give people their freedom, We've gotten further along. I believe that if we could restore a maximum amount of freedom, I personally would be willing to have less wealth in the country. But I would, if I had my freedom, because I value it very much. will have prosperity. If you strive for material wealth and ignore freedom, you won't have freedom or your wealth. And this is what we have done. In many ways, the great prosperity that we created has also become a great danger to us. Because over the last 100 years, that great wealth has prompted people to see the redistribution of wealth as an easier road to gaining wealth than it is by just working hard and producing it. So what did it do? It pretended it was the help the poor, but guess who got control of the system? The high-paid lobbyists, the people who got the benefits, the military-industrial complex, the subsidies going to farmers, on and on. Everybody's out there with their hands out. And we were so wealthy, and it seemed to work. There seemed to be Republicans and Democrats, and conservative liberals would compromise, like, will you give me this? I'll give you this. But the treasury's there now, so it's quite a bit different. And so it worked for a while because we forgot about the basic principle. We concentrate on the basic principle of individual liberty, realizing that our liberties come from our Creator and not from our government. Revolution wrote that the harder the conflict, the more glorious the results. So it is going to be hard. But you know, when you have a tough job and you do it and you come back and you're tired but you were pleased with the achievement, you feel really good. I think basic human happiness comes not from getting stuff from anybody or not tricking anybody or having a lot of luck or winning the lottery. Sometimes people win the lottery and they don't end up happy. Some very wealthy people make billions of dollars, they're not really healthy. I think the thing that makes people happy the most is feeling like they produced something, that they've been productive, that they've done something create such a way that the results can be equally benefiting. Somebody might be able to invent the internet and and all kinds of very complicated things. Others might be more simple in what they do. But I think the rewards are equal, even though the creativity is the difference. A free society for me offers a chance for all of us to strive for virtue and excellence. That is where true happiness comes. Strive for it. But if we depend on the government, and the government's going to take us care of us from cradle to grave and redistribute wealth, solve our problems, protect us from ourselves, take care of the world, and tell everybody how to live, believe me, it's done only with a return to authoritarianism. They say we want to go back to the old days, society of free market. Guess what? Those who argue against these views are the ones who want to go back to the dark ages of tyranny. We have this wonderful experiment, the best experiment in the history of mankind. We have the maximum amount of wealth, the largest middle class, and it's slipping away, except it's being revived. And the big test is, can we keep this going, regardless of the immediate election that's coming up, or are we going to look to our next generation? It used to be easy to say, oh, we got to deal with this because we're passing the stat off to the next generation. It's more imperative that we work more quickly because we are the next generation. We are the ones now who are suffering the consequences and being involved with this debt. This debt crisis around the world is a worldwide phenomenon never known in human history. And just as it brings down countries like Spain and Italy and all the countries that are having trouble, and Greece, our finances aren't really. Some people argue they could be a little bit worse. So we will face that. But this is why we have to move as quickly as possible. And we don't have to wait to say, well, we only have this percentage and this percentage that no one understands it. There's about 7% who understood our American Revolution. So you're among a special group. Special group of things, what Adams called that irate, tireless minority, willing to go crush tires and the mind of the men. There's a lot of brush fires going on, and they're spreading much bigger than I ever dreamed, and the results are, unknown. Each and every one of us have a responsibility, and some people ask, well, what is it? Tell me what to do. You have to do what you can do and what you know how to do. And whether you support in a campaign and volunteer, but check it out. You have to be educated to know what this whole philosophy is about, what freedom is about, what our history shows, and why freedom can bring us all together. We should always have diverse crowds when they come together to talk about freedom, because we all want it equally. So we have to know how to defend the gold standard. We have to know how to defend the reason why we don't need a central bank. We have to defend property rights. There's nothing to talk about. If they earn that living honestly, and separate that from the rich people who did it by ripping us off and using the government. Individual studies and learns and becomes knowledgeable. There will be a job for you, and it will come knocking at your door. And it may be in politics, it may be in education, it may be in the media, who knows what. But make yourself available, but understand the issues. We can win this. I'm excited about what's happening. I'm excited that you came tonight. Thank you very much.